You know, from the outside looking in, on the surface, it may appear that we are late today. I would argue we are, in fact, enlightened today. As we appear to have watched a professional wrestling angle that no one else has actually become aware of in the last half an hour. We know that Ric Flair's last match has now been announced, but I'm not sure everyone is fully aware that it was announced with a bloodbath parking lot angle that we have all just watched together as a family for the last 20 minutes. That's why we're late, folks. But we're here nonetheless. Expert panel as always. Monty, I'll start with you. A moment ago, you said, and I quote, "This is it," which I don't really know what to make of that, but I do agree with it, I think. How are you doing tonight, pal?
Um, I'm good, man. This is it, bro. This is it.
Yeah.
This is these are the moments that we was waiting for when I started this thing. So and everyone needs to get to TMZ and watch this angle. Everyone, we need it. We need the reactions in the chat. We need everything.
Yeah.
We need
It's
it,
quite
man.
the scene. Now, our pal,
The big angle.
our pal Hollywood Hangman Pierce here. Bless him. He was backstage watching us watch this without any idea what was happening. He has now watched it, which allowed us a chance to relive the audio, which was even better, honestly. Hangman, how are you doing tonight? And do you have any just sort of general statement about the main topic of today, I guess, which is that angle we just experienced together?
Oh my fucking god. um Very conflicting feeling. I am morally opposed to a very dubious 4-year-old man wrestling.
Yeah.
Um but I just watched the angle shot for Ric Flair and Andrade versus Jeff Jarrett and Jay Lethal, and I just gotta say, man, they do it different in the territories, man. They do it different in the South. The Crockett Boys understand pro wrestling. I just I watched an angle that made me feel more than most pro wrestling things did all year. Like I watched that beatdown, and I like I kind of need to see the match like right now. Like I'm not even joking. Like this is the heat,
Heat.
the heat, the actual heat. See, because we see so many phony, bad
True.
beatdowns and rundowns and brawls and shit. So when a master like Jeff Jarrett knows how to get actual color and punch, like actually punch, like it's like chilling. You know, it's grisly. It's visceral. It's he's honestly, like, I know it's almost a meme, but Jared gets it.
Yeah.
He fucking gets it.
He's genuinely great in that angle. Like, he is, when he turns, he is like a monster. Like, it rules. Like, he's true evil in that angle. Not in like a showy way or like a mustache twirling way. He's just horrible, you know?
Yes, it's not like performative. It's not theatrical.
Yeah.
It's just this piece of shit got on top of this guy who's, in this situation is a babyface, and just punched him out and left him laying in a way that was genuinely concerning, instead of like the regular just standard pro wrestling beat. Like, I'm telling you, honestly, Monty, I always say this, man. Brawling, beat downs, heat angles, they're lost art. We take them for granted because it's just like, it's like the boys go through the motions and do it as a means to an end to build a match, rather than like doing it to make you want to see what they're selling to you. And it's almost like it's forgotten that these things were made to sell pay-per-views, to sell tickets. I'm just gonna say it. I'm gonna watch the show, and I'm gonna pay for it. I will pay for this event.
Jeff Jarrett.
The price
Jeff
does
Jarrett.
scare me slightly. I have to say the price is a little much. You know?
How much is it US dollars?
I think it's like $35, which is a little frightening for me personally. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I am paying $35 for this. This deserves 50. This purely for the off pure principle, like of pro wrestling, a pro wrestling angle being done this good.
I love that you're buying it on principle. That rules.
I'm buying it on principle because I've been fighting and kicking and screaming at the sky for just good angles. You know,
this is fair. Yeah.
Honestly, Monty, I don't know if I've ever said this. People always argue like, what's the most important thing of wrestling? Is it the promos? Is it the matches? Is it this? Is it that? Is it the presentation? Is it the entrance? What I realize is what pops me more than anything in pro wrestling is a great angle. Like I just love a great angle. You know, after Steamboat and Flair had their third match of their trilogy in '89, we go to the post match interview with Jim Ross and Flair, and Terry Funk, who's one of the judges for the match, should the match go into a time limit draw, he was one of the judges to decide the result. It didn't go to judge's decision because Flair went over, and Terry Funk goes in the ring, and he essentially starts to kind of like basically tell Flair like, you know, maybe we should wrestle again. Mm-hmm. And Flair is kind of like, yeah, like I don't really know what you're talking about, Terry, but anyway, back to my match, because Terry was supposed to be retired at the time. And you know, after Flair dismissed him, you know, Terry just snapped and went insane, and he pile drove him through a table, and he went from like retired veteran wrestler to like pretty much the first time we saw like crazy Terry Funk that we would see this in the '90s. You know, it was like the birth of like Maniac Terry, and it was incredible.
If you would like to know more about that angle, seek out an edition of last year's Fightful magazine in which a young British writer named Joe Holbert may have done 3,000 words about it. Very good angle, I agree, Hangman.
Incredible. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I genuinely think that's like the best angle. To me, that's like the best wrestling angle because it follows a classic, you know?
No, it's amazing. It's so realistic. Like he's interrupting the interview, and then Flair's just kind of like, bro, like, what are you doing? I'm talking.
Yeah, he's like, you're not in the top 10.
Yeah, and then Terry just loses his mind and slaps him, and then Jim Ross is like, yo, what are you doing? And he just attacks him like so unhinged, and Terry goes into the psychopath mode. But I only bring that up to say that like, great angles, man. Like they're such a lost art. And again, they're not just meant to be the thing that you do as a prerequisite just because, you know, it's wrestling, you have to do it to do the match. It's supposed to make you go, oh my God, I have to see these people fight. That's what they're for. I gotta see them fight so badly that I'm gonna part with my money to come see this in person or to come watch it on pay-per-view. That's what an angle's for. And so again, off principle, Jeff Jarrett, like he was just tremendous, and what I want to add is it's astonishing that he gets it, and he displays how much he gets it, right? And you know the old school is just embedded in with him, right? And yet he's a producer for the WWE, and for the most part, none of this makes it to their television, and it's just it's just funny to me. There's so many great minds behind the scenes, you know, like freaking. You know, Billy Kidman is backstage, and Jarrett's backstage, and this guy and that guy, and none of like clearly what you know, what is their philosophy or what they know already from being in the business. None of it makes it to TV. It's just Vince McMahon's variety clown show hour, you know, and it's just kind of insane how that is. But yeah, man,
right? I think it's one of those deals where it's like you can have the best supporting cast, but if the head coach wants to play a certain system, I guess that's what we're playing, right? And everyone has to kind of exist within that world. Unfortunately, it's a shame.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, so the main event is Flair and Andrade versus Jarrett and Jay Lethal. As a wrestling match, I think that will work because Andrade and Lethal will work very hard, and they're two very good wrestlers. There's going to be a lot of heat in the building for Rick. When he plays to the hits and when he does his signature stuff, the crowd is going to go crazy. Jeff Jarrett is surprisingly very competent at his elevated age. I watched him live at Hammerstein, facing Effie for the GCW show, and he was absolutely the better half of that wrestling match. And frankly, it wasn't particularly close. I watched it live and I thought this guy just knows how to work. And again, it's funny that like Jarrett's getting like retroactive praise now on social media, and it feels meme-like, and to a degree it is. To a degree it is, because he's just a master at getting paid. But like he is, Jarrett's good. Like Jarrett's
Absolutely.
good. So yeah, the show overall is probably going to be a great show. To be honest, let me get the card up. Flares.
The undercard is strong. It must be said.
It's very strong.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
strong. Surprisingly strong.
Yeah, I thought it was, to be honest with you, I thought it was gonna just be a bunch of like bullshit matches and NWA nonsense, to be honest with you. Like I thought like Trevor Murdoch and shit was gonna be on the card and that kind of thing. But like it's look at this card, bro. Ren Narita is taking on Clark Connors. And then we have
that match is such a strange selection, but it's gonna be very good. It's just...
Ren Narita versus Clark Connors. The Motor City Machine Guns versus the American Wolves, Davey Richards and Eddie Edwards.
Yeah, that was strong.
Ray Phoenix versus Black Taurus versus Laredo Kid versus Bandito in a 4-way.
You have to turn Rick's monitor off for that one. I'm not sure really enjoy that one too much, to be honest with you, but that'll be a hell of a time.
Jacob Fatu versus Josh Alexander.
That should be excellent.
Like this card is crazy. This will pop Monty. Harry Smith versus Killer Cross.
Why will that pop me?
You're an apologist of old.
Yeah.
No,
that'll be fine. Ricky Morton, the current better half of the Rock and Roll Express, who can still go to a degree, is teaming with Kerry Morton against Brock Anderson and Brian Pillman Jr. That'll be fine. The Von Erichs, who are a fine tag team, are going to take on the Briscoes, who are a great tag team. And the Impact Knockouts title is being defended. Jordan Grace is taking on Deonna Purrazzo and Rachel Ellering. So yeah, this is going to be a pretty strong event, to be honest.
It is.
So yeah,
Monty, I know you're very excited. You committing to buying this?
We'll see.
We'll see. Hesitance. There you go. Someone in the chat said it's only like £17 for us, Monty. We might be able to work saying that. Why do we not have codes? I'm going to ask this again. Have you seen some of the people that get codes? Some people watch these shows. We should have codes. Bullshit. Yeah, that's fine. I want to talk about this Angle situation in all seriousness.
Mm-hmm.
He's saying that some people in the chat are making the big Angle joke because they're so bored of me talking about angles on these, but it's important. I'm glad you brought it up. You led the way there. It's like AEW, it would be unfair to say they don't do angles, but like they don't do angles like this, right? Like where it feels like the whole show, like everything comes to a halt because it's something truly dramatic and unbelievable. They don't do stuff like that. And it's like, I sometimes feel like an old man when I talk about it, but it's like, there's something to be said for something that just truly shocks the system where you kind of go, holy shit, what just happened? Do you think, like, I agree with you that the performers aren't, they kind of go through the motions, but have bookers lost their way in terms of knowing what this is at this point? What do we think the actual deal is in 2022?
Well, when it comes to just angles just stinking now?
Yeah, like it doesn't even. They're not even good ideas. Like the performance is one thing, but they're so.
It's a couple things. Wrestling is very Eastern embedded with its mindset because the last big boom was from the Attitude Era in the World Wrestling Federation, and that was creatively spearheaded by somebody who wasn't rooted in just pro wrestling. Vince Russo is not a territory guy. He's an entertainment guy. He's a Crash Television guy. He's a Jeff Jarrett. I mean, Russo is closer to MTV and Beavis and Butthead than he is, a territory, and that has its positives and negatives. But one of the negatives is there's different priorities, and so wrestling's frame of reference, modern wrestling's frame of reference, frankly, is going to be independent wrestling of the last 20 years. It's going to be Japanese wrestling from the New Japan boom of the last decade, and it's going to be Attitude Era WWF, because the WWE essentially, even in a PG version, has been putting on the same show for 20 years. You know what I mean? And so, really, that's 100% the reason. It's why our generation, when it comes to what we believe about wrestling and how we think and approach the game, the frame of reference ultimately will be drawn from the WWE of the boom of 20 years ago. And so it's actually the same reason why I was talking to someone on Twitter about punches in wrestling and how like closed-fisted punches were never traditionally supposed to be a thing in wrestling. Like that was breaking the rules. You know, territory heels would throw a punch, you know, behind the ref's back because they're a bastard for doing so. They put their opponent in the headlock and do a close range punch, you know, and they do it in the headlock so that the ref couldn't see it. You know, punches were supposed to be for, you know, no rules, no DQ type of matches because there was so much heat. It was like these guys hate each other so much they're gonna punch each other in the face. You know, Japanese wrestling never really did close-fisted punches because that would expose that wrestling is fake. And which is why like they would opt for more submission grapple oriented pro wrestling that looks legitimate. And if nothing else, you know, you do maybe a kick or a strike or an elbow strike or a forearm, you know, because wrestling looked real like that. But for our generation, it's like we don't even think about it that way. You think wrestling, yeah, they do fake punches because that's just what they do. Because WWE never cared about any of that shit. They're like, yeah, throw a punch. Who gives a shit? So that's what I'm saying. WWE controls just in so many ways. Like we know the obvious ways of like how they control history, right? But they control so many things about how we subliminally approach and perceive professional wrestling, which is why it trickles down to the performers and the bookers. And so the bookers now, it's like, I think even with the bookers, it's like, unless you're like literally 65, in your mind, it's like, yeah, you know, we're going to shoot an angle to do a cool match, or we're just going to book the cool match. And the angle is going to be more about doing something really crazy or flashy or exciting rather than making you feel emotional about something or afraid, or even more importantly, to believe what you're seeing. You know, wrestling is not it's no longer a business of trying to make you believe. It's just a business of trying to entertain. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily good or bad. I'm just saying that results in certain things being nowhere near as good as they were, and other things being more focused on and enhanced. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that makes sense.
No, I think it did, absolutely. It's something that I just find to be a very interesting topic because I've often asked, you know, our audience and people in the chat that would be familiar with this conversation, Monty will even be familiar with it, but I've often asked people, what's the most old school traditional angle AEW have shot on their TV? We're 3 years now, right? And the one that most people often say is, remember the Pinnacle's emergence? That big angle they did to close the show? Because very seldom do they close the show with an angle. Like they'll kind of do, you know, they'll do something, they'll just go, anyway, up next. Yeah. Is that the best, Monty, what do you think? Is that the best example in their 3-year history here? I'm just using AEW because it's such a short, we can actually kind of look at that whole run. What's the most like conventional is what I'm going to use. I don't know if it's the right word necessarily, but old school pro wrestling angle. Is that it, the Pinnacle?
Probably MJF.
Everything MJF does, to be honest.
MJF is pretty old school in that sense, to be honest. He tries. Probably the one you mentioned, to be honest. But there is other examples, including MJF, to be honest.
The Punk one. Remember the go home when Punk got juice?
With the white shirt.
See, that's a good example though of like that absolutely should have closed that show. You know, 100%. They should have closed the show with Punk hanging over the rope with blood pour. Like, but I get that, you know, you have to do what you have to do. I don't know.
I was gonna say, when he swerved CM Punk, when you know, like in Daly's place, when he just like he had this man chained in handcuffs, I believe, and was just beating the shit out of him, like, and he's pouring blood. That's super old school. There's that. A lot of Cody Rhodes stuff was just embedded in the wrestling of his father's time, and that's why when that trickled into Monday Night Raw when Cody was there, it was great. So yeah, I think a lot of the stuff Cody did, a lot of the stuff MJF did was super throwback in general. You know. Yeah,
I like the Demon Grin has a good. He reminds me of Kenny running off with the belt, and that's a good example of where AEW are different in that. I vividly remember the conversations in that week following when he ran off with the belt, and there was a lot of talk about like these big invasion angles, and in reality, sort of the next week's show just started as usual. They went, Kenny's going to be here later. He's going to do a promo. Like, it was not, you know, once upon a time. And this isn't, again, as you said, this isn't better or worse. This is just how it is right now. They very much treated that in its own island rather than having the wrestlers start the next show being like, where the fuck is our world title? You know, it wasn't like it overtook the whole show like it once maybe would have, perhaps should have. I don't know.
No. You know, if that happened like 30, 35 years ago, 40 years ago, there'd be a kayfabe championship committee that's like going deliberations on how to handle and properly punish Kenny Omega and Don Callis. Don Callis would be fined X amount of dollars for his involvement in the situation. Kenny Omega would be under review and potentially suspended. And then the committee would make a decision on what to do with Kenny Omega. One of the top baby faces that are being pushed would go up to the committee and tell them, like, can you guys still hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Hello. One of the top baby faces would go up to the committee and say, whatever you do not strip him of the championship and don't suspend him because I want to take him out. And does that make sense? Fuck no. But the babyface is such a tough, badass guy that it's like, no, I want to beat him. I don't care if he's this and that. And the fans are going to rally around that because it's like, yeah, we want to see action in reinforce and create the the result here. We don't want people in suits to decide what happens here. We want our guy to take out the bad guy in order to bring the championship home, so to speak. And so that's what would happen. John Moxley would have walked up to Tony Khan and the committee and been like, fuck Don Callis, fuck Kenny Omega. I'm gonna beat his ass and bring the AEW championship back, whatever. And you go from there and so on and so forth. Kenny Omega, he gets beaten, he'll disappear for 2 months, and then we'll be informed that he struck a big money contract with Khan to return to AEW on the basis that he promises not to do A, B, and C. That's how it would have been done before. But now, because of Russo and Crash TV and what we're influenced now, it's very much a week to week kind of like fast paced Looney Tunes cartoon, so to speak. In that that stuff just happens and we just like skip right to the next thing the next week because it's not about like realistic like internal logic as much. Maybe it's just kind of more like we accept in wrestling that like we just kind of have to keep things moving and get to the next thing.
The best example was when they did the angle with the fireball with Eddie and Jericho. That's like the perfect example. Like that would have stopped the whole TV show once upon a time. Here it was like, oh my god, that was bad. Anyway, up next, Samoa Joe versus
they would have been interviewing every wrestler to ask their opinions on like the heinous actions of Chris Jericho. And guys would be like, I'm not a big Eddie Kingston fan, but what Jericho did was just actually unbecoming of.
How many overarching angles have there ever really?
Not many. That's something I would say.
Not start to finish of a show.
I was going to say it would be cool if we just kind of lament some of the insane things that happen on wrestling shows. Because think about it, like you're watching a broadcast where people are supposed to have like athletic combat, and like people are like beating people up and beating up each other's friends and like hitting each other into cars and crushing arms and doors and throwing fireballs at each other and attacking each other after the bell and using chairs and weapons and things like that. And outside of referees just kind of going, hey, can you like please stop? Nothing really is policed or sanctioned or punished. And no one ever talks about these things like to the other performers, like, yeah, I don't support that. I don't condone that. We're here to wrestle. Like, none of that happens. It's just it's just kind of like, all right, well, that was a crazy thing. Next match.
It's difficult. I do think there's there's probably a good argument that like the modern fan, whatever that means, basically the fan that doesn't care about what we're talking about, like it probably has no negative effect on them when they just move on. But for me, it's always jarring, right? So,
it's funny because I forgot what attack it was. One of the attacks, it might have been the Ruby Soho attack. We just cut to the commentary team and like they're like shaking their heads like, oh, I can't believe what Jericho did. Like, and Taz is like, like, man, what a wow. Folks are gonna take you next.
We didn't even see you didn't even see Eddie's reaction.
It was
crazy, bro.
No, that reaction was so funny because
like on just going to the next thing.
Yeah,
it's insane.
I was just gonna say though, it was just so funny because like we cut to Taz and Excalibur, and they're just like, man, that's crazy. Next match, and like it's just so funny.
Absolutely, that was a great example. Monty's right. The fact they didn't even go back to the ring for Eddie was incredible. Like he was in the ring.
And to be fair, so that doesn't seem like I'm beating up on AEW. WWE is like almost like a trillion times worse because even and this is a period when like Raw was pretty good, but when Randy Orton, this is the one that sticks out to me. When Randy Orton was beating up on Edge. In that first post-Royal Rumble angle in 2020, like, and he was getting ready to like decapitate him with like a concerto, right? Randy Orton is moving at a glacial pace, and yet no referee is going to protect this man from getting decapitated. Like they're all just like, "Hey, stop! No, don't do that! Like, stop it! No, like, where's the security? Where's the like?" Here's the thing: in old angles, guys, if you look at it, when attacks like this happen, they're repeatedly, vigorously hitting the bell. You know, like, and so there's always movement and chaos. It's not like a theatrical, drawn out display. It's like the bell is ringing, people are hitting the ring, referees, you know, officials, security. They're trying to fight. They're trying to hold this back. There's always kinetic movement, and it's wild and it's chaotic. And the commentary is burying the heel for what they're doing, and burying the fact that they're interrupting a broadcast. You know what I mean? And instead now it's just like this heel gets to just slowly have this set piece moment, this dramatic set piece moment where he just, you know.
To the point, you know, and this is where it gets interesting about the audience, right? Because everything you just said is true. He was allowed to go, he just went. But the one thing I remember about that angle was the way the live crowd reacted. The theatrics worked a trick. Like I remember people being... There was screams and stuff when Randy was teasing things at a snail's pace.
Yeah.
And that's a good example of where I think perhaps it comes off differently to someone who hasn't seen, I'm going to use a phrase I'm hesitant to, but the way it used to be, so to speak. Because we think that because we've seen it done, you know, the way we deem to be correct, or like where, I don't know, it's interesting. Like the more theatrical, a good example recently was Blood and Guts. And I kind of reached this conclusion in my head. Instinctively, I do not like guys fighting to the top of Blood and Guts. I just think it's theatrical, it's kind of phony, and it's unnecessary. But I watched it back and I listened to the audience. I was like, they don't give a shit that I prefer 92 War Games. Like to them, it's more exciting. Like they want the theatrics. They want it to be kind of cinematic. I'm hesitant on that word. But,
no.
I think that's what they want. You know.
No, you're right. Well, this is why. Well, this is why it is what it is. You know, ultimately, even though I pointed out and explained everything.
Yeah.
The bottom line is there's positives and negatives to both, and there's a reason the approach that is the modern accepted approach is the one that it is. It's because that worked for so long, you know. Like ultimately, you know, pro wrestling has its traditions and it has things that for me make it a bit more logical and realistic, and you know maybe dots its I's and checks its T's a bit better. But quite frankly. There were periods where wrestling was cold in the 90s, adhering to said traditions, and when they decided to just kind of blow the roof off of what the norms were and just become like a chaotic show, and an entertainment show, quite frankly, you know, and a theatrical show, you know, certain things connected more. And so, yeah, look, there are obviously positives to sports entertainment and theatrics, you know, and I totally get that, which is why, you know, I like wrestlers being more performers than wrestlers sometimes, you know, like I like them trying to engage the crowd and this and that. But I do think, you know, there's a way to do a proper mix of both. And not to dick ride, but I think that's why Cody Rhodes is, I think maybe a bit more special than given credit for. Like Monty said like 2 months ago that Cody Rhodes is pro wrestling, and like it felt like a meme. It felt like a meme statement, but like I'm starting to see the light.
It's not literally like he's pro wrestling, but it's just like it's so like
he's a territory baby, and he's a sports entertainer at the same time. Like you can
see it in him, like it's just. The way he does his angles, the way he does brawls, the way he does everything, the way he's so theatrical in certain times, he's just even the way he does his promos, you can just tell like he's pro wrestling. He's like ingrained deep into him. Like,
he can lose his way in that kind of.
Yeah, he
loses
his
mind. The Cody verse was a mess, you know. Like,
he can blend his like a good example was when he did the. Like, it always strikes me. I know everyone loves the match, and I get it. Like, you know the ladder match with Sammy? Like, him starting
I wasn't
that
as high as other people on that.
They started that match with, like, an old school, like, TV title opening. Like, they were, like, running the ropes and doing drop-down tackles and stuff. It's like, because he kind of sometimes the variety is a real strength. Other times he kind of smashes all these ideas together, and you get this sort
the
of...
Andrade match was crazy for that. The Andrade match is like, it was like a journey through... It was a
Yeah, like
journey through the past 50 years of wrestling.
it was a territory
15
brawl, and then it
minutes,
became this
it's
sort of
crazy.
wild,
Like,
plunder
yes,
fest. Yeah,
like we went from NWA to like ECW to like AEW. Like it was
It's
nuts.
crazy, bro.
Another guy, to be honest with you, who actually blends these things pretty well too. Even though if you ask him, he will be so opposed to this label in any way. But I think Eddie Kingston is a guy who, like, because Eddie Kingston, I think just in his spirit and in his soul, he is ECW, he is NWA, he is modern pro wrestling, he is all Japan pro wrestling. Like, he embodies so many of these different things at the same time. With just how he carries himself and how he builds his matches, how he treats it like it's a shoot, how he works the match. The directions his match is going, and so I think that's why he connects so perfectly.
yeah.
So
I agree. I also think we're seeing, and this is kind of a loose theory, but I think
mhm,
Punk's run, I thought, made this really interesting because I think
mhm.
what we've seen is we're in a time now where every wrestler has they're like stylistic, like a Swiss Army knife. They do everything, right? Like, they do a bit
Yeah,
of
yeah,
high
yeah.
flying. I think we're seeing people enjoy the idea of just this guy is a specialist. Eddie Kingston is more than just a brawler, but on TV, he basically portrays a brawler. He'll do a dive once a year, and he'll use it when it matters. But
Mhm,
I think people can connect with that idea that it's like, this is who that dude is as a wrestler.
mhm,
I think when you see how much people enjoy watching Zack Sabre Jr. more now than ever, I feel. And
mhm,
it's like, because of all of the guys in New Japan, and look, they're all great wrestlers, I'm wrong, but a lot of them do a bit of everything. Zach
mhm,
he's a mat wrestler. That's who he
mhm,
is. Like, and he
mhm.
uses that accordingly. I don't know if that's a thing that's truly happened across the industry, but I do think there's something to be said for like specialists being more valuable than ever because everyone now just does a kind of variety show
Well,
in ring.
what I find fascinating is specialists is kind of what the industry was built on
Yeah,
a long time ago, and as
Definitely.
wrestling of all kind became readily available for people, we just started to begin to take hybrid styles in, and so we embraced wrestling from around the world in the United States, and so as a result, the average wrestler became super versatile.
yeah,
They'll be able to lock up and do the basic drop down tackle stuff, but they'll also be able to do very very just kind of shoot style, technical wrestling, and then they can do some high flying, and generally speaking, that's a good thing. But that does take away like the periods where like certain wrestlers stood out because they were the only guy you would be able to see do this, or the
yeah.
only guy that could do this. Rey Mysterio blew people's minds because it was like no one could wrestle like Rey Mysterio. you
Mm-hmm.
know and we got to a period where like the people of yesteryear who blew your minds because they could do this type of lucha maneuver. Only this guy could do this level of technical scientific wrestling, as they would say. um and then everybody could kind of just do everything. And so
Right.
if everybody could do everything, then what means anything?
Mm-hmm.
Is you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so yeah. But the thing is, now the specialists of now, they're specialists because yes, even though everybody can technically do everything, these guys can do this one thing like on a higher level than
Yes.
anybody.
Yeah.
Which is
And
why like
you
Saber
know,
stands out.
yeah, and it allows for some really interesting storytelling. Like I
Mhm.
think we're all, I don't know about Monty, he's a little bit on the fence, but we're pro Jonathan Gresham around
Hold
here.
on.
And
Hold on.
no, but in all seriousness, because I know you agree with this point, Wade, but like, I find it very compelling the way that he kind of weaponizes his style to tell those stories. Like the way that if he gets in a strike exchange, he's kind of fucked is the story. Like he hasn't got a good chin. I've always found that can be compelling. Zach
Yes,
does a
yes,
similar version of it. It's
yes.
interesting.
Yeah,
It
and I think wrestlers like that make it for commentators like Ian Riccaboni to just
yeah,
be really great at their job, because Riccaboni is a sports style commentator at heart. He's a baseball guy, and when you listen to him talk about wrestling and how he breaks down the matches, it's the opposite of the WWE approach, which is like, don't call moves, tell the story.
yeah,
And Riccaboni is like, I am telling the story. The story is this guy has to do this to win this match, and that guy has to do this to be able to take him out. And I don't know if you saw his thread for Samoa
I
Joe
did.
versus Jay Lethal,
Yeah,
but it was fucking brilliant. Like, it was tremendous in my opinion. Like, I read that and I was like, we need this like on television. And it made me realize like why I like him. And it's because of those types of things. And so when you're a wrestler like John, who, he's really great at A, B, and C, and like an athlete, like he's gonna try to get you to play his game his way so that he can beat you. Or like you're watching an MMA fight. Like it makes it easy for Riccaboni to kind of tell that story and kind of push that out there.
Yes.
So it makes for great and unique in-ring storytelling.
Yeah, and it's worth noting again, it's like we did with the last kind of conversation, it's like I'm not opposed to guys just having like the modern match, right? There's something to be said for it. But it is nice when you can kind of sink your teeth into a theme or two. Monty, where do you stand on this kind of, before we get into some of the matches from the weekend, where do you stand on this sort of broad topic about, the style range in wrestling right now and so on and so forth?
Someone mentioned it in the chat. It's like back in like the early thousands, people like the man who don't really get known too often, and Kurt Angle. They were looked at as like in-ring gods because the in-ring standard back then wasn't nowhere near what it is now. Whereas now everyone can kind of do everything. So if you're good in ring, what does that really mean? Like that doesn't really make you very valuable at all. So there is definitely something to be said with specialists, whether that's ZSJ, Gresham type, or whether that's I don't know, whether that's a lucha like Vikingo. Like he's kind of like one of those now because he's an attraction because people want to see him just do one thing.
It's a big culture change, I think, Monty. Because of this and because everybody's like a good worker now. Gone are the people who were like cult heroes to hardcore fans just purely because they were tremendous workers. Like, a Jerry Lynn or a Bryan Danielson would be in the indies and like they would just treat them like gods just because these guys wrestle in a way that like no one else wrestles. Same with AJ Styles or certain other guys, Samoa Joe. And not that these guys didn't have personalities, because like Bryan Danielson and Joe and AJ would eventually showcase that they can entertain too. But frankly, those are the types of dudes. Like there was a period where fans would show up to a WWE show with a sign, and on their sign is the name of a wrestler that is on the independent scene who's just so great that like you could argue on a forum like they're better than anybody in a mainstream company, and they're just purely off in ring, right? And now there's guys who aren't in mainstream companies who are frankly just their main appeal is just that they're great in ring, and that's really not enough to get on TV nowadays, because like the guys on TV at the top for the most part are guys who are tremendous in ring, but they're also great at other things too, which is why they're on top. It's the reason why the newest cruiserweight division of WWE failed in like 2016, 17. Like who cares if Arya Daivari can do like a Rana and a tope? Seth Rollins does that.
Yeah. And also, the kind of, there was a lot of issues in terms of just the literal size difference not being a thing was kind of brutal. Like at one point, Buddy was the cruiserweight champ while AJ was the WWE champ. It's like AJ's, it's just that stuff's always difficult to overcome. So you're absolutely right. It's we're at a point where everyone has cool moves effectively. I still think it's interesting if you look around the scene, there are still guys who are so special they can escape that kind of general rule. Like a Takeshita is very charismatic, but ultimately he's getting over in matches on just how cool his shit looks, really. Like he'll hit the ropes hard, he'll pop, So I think it kind of is a credit to the guys that do get over that way. That
they're just really that great. Yeah, 100%. I broke it down to Monty last week. I said it's partially because he's doing it at what is he, 6'2", 6 like whatever. He's doing it at 6'2", 240 rather than being 5'9", 190. I think that's what it is. I think we've seen every move like a million times now, right? But what'll impress us now is seeing a person of a different type of mold doing a certain type of move. It's the reason why when Takeshita did the tope con hello, the crowd chanted "Holy shit!" Seeing a guy with that type of broad build and height and size do it and do the dive and then do the Blue Thunder Bomb and all that stuff, like it's like really astonishing.
He's like a superhero.
Yeah, literally like a superhero. Him, Drew McIntyre, Hangman Page. I think this is like the new wave of just freak in wrestling. To me, Joe, I think like in 2017 roughly, there was a wave of like big fat guys who do flips, and like that was the cool new thing. And that was the flippy big men was the wrestling's version of like NBA centers who now shoot 3-pointers, right? And so it was like, wow, the game is changing. Holy shit, they're doing that. But even that is kind of a cliche now. Like to the point where like, I don't know about you, but a lot of guys, and including myself, are kind of saying like, dude, just work like a fucking big man, bro. Like I don't need to just stop getting so cute, right? And so because that's a cliche now, I think the new like astonishing mold is just this like ridiculously freak buff super athlete who's like above 6 foot, but not like the Undertaker sized, or like Big Show sized. He's like 6'2", he's like 240, and he can just do any move under the sun, and he does it with the same speed and explosiveness and athleticism of an AJ Styles or a Kenny Omega. Like, we're starting to see these guys trickle in, like Hangman Page, like Takeshita. And so when they do it, that's the current thing that blows people's minds now. That's what's impressing us now.
It's part of what what Okada's especially is what he is, how he is as well, because he kind of fits that mold as well. Like, he's not as big as Takeshita, but he's bigger than most of the guys you see doing some of the shit that he does. Like, he's a freak athlete. Like, he does a drop kick and people lose their mind, because
exactly.
He does it in a way that no one else can do it.
The height he gets on it, everything. I think the big residual effect of this though is it leaves people who are cruiserweight size, who literally have no appeal other than just doing moves. It does leave them in the dust, quite frankly. Like, to me, I think those types of guys, like, they're kind of they need to like figure out what else to do to kind of get them to over the hump. Because like, I look at like a Blake Christian, for example, right? And it's like, I think he's like such a ways away from like really taking himself to a level where he's a worthwhile time to go on TV, to be honest with you. And he's not gonna bridge the gap just by like wrestling his ass off. I really don't think, because we're just getting too advanced, and there's just too many guys who can do really great things, and other people are doing it in a more impressive way, or by looking more impressive, or being physically more impressive, and it's just like we move too fast as a business. And if your main appeal is in ring, and you're not, like I said, like a Takeshita size, you have to now rethink, how do I get over now? So
absolutely.
Shall we go through the weekend?
We probably should.
Yeah, I totally forgot we had topics. Holy shit!
I'm so
sorry.
We just been flowing, man. It just happens sometimes. But where should we start? We'll start with the G1. So yeah. I don't want to go through every single match, but just kind of like what matches popped you the most, what did you get into the most, what did you hate, anything, etc.
Well, I think my leading answer. Cheap plug, WrestlePurists.com, right? I have a little match review. It's about 1,000 words long. It's way too long, but nonetheless, enough about my editing process. Kenta and Zack Sabre Jr. I love Kenta. I'm aware he's not what he was, and that's slight an understatement. I think he's adjusted well in the last couple of years to who he is now. But I have to say I was slightly concerned about him, because at the Tokyo Dome, I mean, he left that match with like a comical list of ailments. I mean, it was like, do you remember the announcement of his injuries? It was ridiculous. And
it looked like a laundry list.
Yeah, I mean, I admire the guy greatly. I think the world of him, but I looked at the point he's at in his career, he's over 40 now, and he's had a lot of injuries. And I thought, I don't know what he's going to look like in this G1. I thought he looked really somehow refreshed against Zack. I actually thought his offense looked as good as it has in a long time. It is not a match of the year candidate. I'm not what I'm framing it as. I thought it was very compelling, and I thought the dynamic between both guys. I think they've wrestled in like this is their 4th straight G1 match with each other. The kind of emotional weight that Kenta now wrestles with, where he's kind of like this really resentful figure. He seems so hateful and bitter and mad at everything. Because like that's ultimately the idea of the match, right? It was like he lost the match because he was like not content with what he'd done. Like he just felt the need to stay out there and keep beating up Zack. I thought it was tremendous. Again, it's not the most sort of showy match. I doubt it'll be anyone's top 5 of the tournament by the end of the month or the end of next month. But I just thought it was very, very compelling. I love what Zack and what Kenta did. I know where you guys are at, and I'll start with you, Hangman. What did you think of Kenta and Zack?
Yeah, I was half watching this because I was tired and I was eating, but but what I can say is Kenta's an interesting person to evaluate, because he gets shit for being like quote unquote washed, but it's only because he had such a high like skill level and output when he was in his physical prime, to the point where like just being like solid, it stands out so much compared to what he was. You know what I mean? Like the Kenta of 10 to 15 years ago was like unreal, unreal. And if hardcore fans had the access to Japanese wrestling that we do now, then like we'd be talking about him like he's like the best wrestler in the world. Like even more so than he was talked about at the time. But that notwithstanding, Kenta, he has his days and he has his moments, and like you said, he has absolutely adjusted pretty well recently to his new physical state and how he can work around what he can and can't do.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a mean streak and a spiteful streak to Kenta's approach now and how he wrestles. And I think just being an annoyed man kicking Zack, it worked for the match. I enjoyed it for what it was. I thought it was actually one of his best New Japan matches since his return run. So yeah, that's kind of what I thought about it. I thought that was the best match I saw out of the 2 G1 days.
It was my favorite too, Monty. We was actually talking last night. We kind of overlapped the situation with Kenta. I feel the same thing has happened with Joe at times, where people are too busy comparing him to who he was and not just looking at him for what he is.
Yeah,
He's still a very, very effective pro wrestler. What do you think
100%.
of Kenta and Zack Sabre Jr., Monty?
I liked it. Obviously, as you know, I love Zack Sabre Jr. And there's just certain elements in this match. Like Zack does this a lot, where he's like in a similar way to like Gresham with his being like weakness to striking.
Yeah.
Zack will let his ego just kind of like swallow him up, and he'll try get into kicking exchanges with Kenta and get the shit kicked out of him. And there was a spot halfway through the match where they were letting each other kick each other. Zack got the shit kicked out of him. Then Kenta went to let him kick him again, but he didn't just kick him; he just grabbed him and done the what is it even called? The neck twist thing he does with his feet.
It's a difficult one to make look good. He pulls it off pretty well.
Yeah, he does it great. Everything he does just looks, painful. And Kenta looked, like you said, very refreshed, and it was good to see him because on the last run he was on, like pre-injury, he was just kind of doing like the G1 runs and stuff. Like he was just doing a bunch of like bullshit. Yeah, pretty much like purposely getting heat, which was obviously in pandemic era is like weird, but whatever.
Indeed. Yeah.
That's been a weird thing in New Japan for me, but this version of Kenta that's came back, like you said, pretty refreshed, great match. I'm not sure if it was my best match of the weekend, even G1, but it's definitely one of the better matches I've seen.
We'll go back to that. I'm intrigued what your favorite is. In terms of Zack, it is important to kind of, I focused on Kenta very much, but the way that Zack worked Kenta's knee in that first act of this match was like, his ability to turn the corner and really have some edge is honestly underrated at this point. Like, he can be brutal when he focuses in. I think people imagine, and I've been guilty of this when I've not been watching enough Zack, people think of him as like the very like elegant mat wrestler who does like the cool sequences and transitions and he flows. Man, when he like really focuses in and gets nasty in there, he can pull that off, right? Monty, that's something you've kind of stressed to me 1,001 times. Like, he's more versatile than people give him credit for, I think, a lot.
Yeah, it's like some of his stuff, especially the past couple of years, like some of his stuff just looks nasty, man. Like it's not just all that as a nice trend, like you just said. Like it's not just like the flowing sequences that look nice and the technique crisp and perfect, etc. Like he can still he still does that sometimes, and he still mixes that into his matches and stuff. But now he's just got kind of more of like an edge to his stuff, and he can when he yanks on things, like
it looks like it hurts. It looks like
he's special, man. I've said for a minute now, but I think he's the best technical wrestler in the world at tech. Like Danielson's obviously the better wrestler, but I just think when it comes to like just straight technical
on the mat is what you mean, right?
On the mat. I just don't think anyone's, because he's such a specialist. But Danielson is a specialist, but nowhere near as much as like a ZSJ.
He's more of a hybrid now than he was.
Yeah, 100%. And Zack is like, even to his detriment sometimes. Especially when he hasn't got the right matchup in there with him. So yeah, like I said, I think Zack's like special, mind blowing at times. The past couple tournaments in New Japan, I've said that he's probably been the best tournament wrestler in Japan, which is like extremely high level of praise.
Extremely high level of consistency.
Yeah,
with his output. You know, I don't watch a lot of Zack Sabre Jr. matches that I think like this just isn't good. You know.
Yeah, very, very good. It was the one that jumped off the page for me on night 2. I mean, it delivered. Monty, I want to go. You mentioned, wasn't sure this was your favorite. Let's stick to the G1 because I don't know I had some good candidates. But let's kind of stay within the G1. What was your favorite of the weekend, Monty?
I don't know if I could single out one, to be honest, because in the conversation would be the one that we just talked about.
Yeah.
Taichi versus Ishii and Okada versus Cobb.
Wait, you're not Ospreay?
I was going to say Ospreay versus. I was about to say Ospreay versus Phantasmo was great as well, because Phantasmo wasn't like fucking around like he does all the time. when he locks in, he can have great matches. He done it in Best of Super Juniors with Robbie Eagles. That was a great match, and he kind of, when there's actual heat between him and his opponent, and he locks in, and he don't do all these like silly heat and popping himself. He can have these really standout great matches, but I'd struggle to pick between the 4, to be honest. Because they're all so different as well, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because Okada versus Cobb is like, you got what, anyone who's a fan of New Japan's probably seen them recently have at least a couple of the matches have wrestled each other quite a lot.
They have at least like 6, 7.
Yeah, and they don't miss, you know. Every time I see Okada every time Okada lifts Cobb, it's crazy.
For sure.
But then Ishii versus Taichi was just like from the start, like from the start, it was just like a heated encounter. Like Taichi was just like incredible in the match. Ishii was obviously Ishii, and
he's just the most consistent wrestler I've ever seen. Like
it's nuts, isn't it? It's
he never changes either. He's just like forever.
It's the same match, but not exactly the same.
That's the funny thing about it. Like he's just doing the same thing, and it's always awesome, and it's always like really good. He just Ishii's his way into a 4-star match all the time.
Yeah,
like that. That's the only way I can explain it. He just Ishii's his way into it. So
like it's a real indictment on his opponent. If you look at a night and he's resting on it, and it's like he doesn't stand out as the matchup of the show. Like 100%, generally. 100%. You'll look at a G1 night and it's like, if Ishii's wrestling, okay, we'll have something worthwhile, because there are going to be some nights on this particular G1. I think it's fair to say where you're not necessarily going to
be a down night.
Yeah, I think more so this year than we're actually used to in the last stretch here. I haven't watched the last couple with the pandemic. I didn't watch a lot of, but I don't know, man. Like adding people to the tournament, but not necessarily adding the quality people are looking for. I think is going to kind of have an effect as we go through the month here, because it's obviously it's fresh now, but we'll see. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, there's going to be a couple one that are definitely just the dog days of the G1, so to speak, and
so you don't want that. You don't want that with a G1, but that's not G1,
there's
not meant to be any off days.
We got used to people being in these pretty much everybody being at least good. You know what I mean? In the tournament.
Yeah, it'd just be a bunch of incredible wrestlers. And
so
Farley and
now we're at a thing where 10% of the people in here are just kind of okay, and that's going to trickle into a lot of just maybe less than stellar matches, and that's okay, but because of what G1's reputation is, it's gonna appear very substandard in comparison to what the G1 we're used to is.
Indeed. Speaking of such, night 2 had a Toriano JONAH match, which was quite controversial in a range of ways. One of which being our famed collective star ratings. Monty, what did that come out at in the end? What was the final score for JONAH?
1 star.
That's too high. That's too high. I'm not even joking when I say that that's way too high.
Yeah, it was pretty rough, right? That's
way too.
It's way too high.
In all seriousness, there was a good conversation that
I am being serious.
No, I'm with you. I'm just
Go ahead, Joe.
We were privy to a good conversation between you and I don't know if he wants to be named in a JONAH debate. So I'll just say a pal of ours, right?
Sure.
And it was interesting I will say that whatever side of that debate you're on in terms of what Jonah should or shouldn't be doing, I cannot believe they put him in the opening match of the G1 against Yujiro Yano. I couldn't believe it. I was like, it just that puzzled me. I don't know how his tournament will end up. It was not the best first impression, but you got to believe him and Okada should be like good, right? Shouldn't it? I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, it's
I think so.
It's a main event, so you know Okada's not going to let it. You know, Okada's not going to flop his main event. You know, Jonah's at least is. You know, you can do something with him. He's not useless. You know.
No, he's not all. He's just it's like
just let Okada lead. You know.
I think he'll have some good matches in it. It's an interesting conversation because he has been an interesting conversation for a while now. When he was in NXT, people can tell you this didn't happen. There were 100% people online that thought he was going to actually be a big hit on the main roster. And I never saw it. I've been wrong about people. I was, and that one is what it is. WWE is unpredictable. But I just find him to be somewhat frustrating because I think it's what you were kind of getting at, Hangman. Like he doesn't quite project the kind of aura, the kind of presence that you want for what he's trying to be, I think, which is what makes him frustrating.
Like. Yeah, exactly. Like, he don't present the aura of what he's strikingly big, man. He's fucking huge,
and he's athletic, right?
Yeah.
He's stuff. Yeah,
but it just
he's got the black hair and and you looking bastard, bro, and he just feels kind of like a guy after about a couple minutes. It's mad.
I think he's absolutely a bit of an inconsistent and really frustrating wrestler to follow, and part of why I had so much to say about the Yano thing was because it was a bit of a buildup of my feelings watching him since leaving WWE. Because frankly, I admittedly have a bit of a vested interest in him for a few reasons. I have a vested interest in his G1 campaign more so than a couple others, just purely by virtue of him being a different member, a different person to enter the G1 than usual. And so, we know Shingo and Okada are great, right? But I'm not particularly jumping to see what they're doing just because it's I've seen Okada wrestle and I've seen Shingo Takagi wrestle and I've seen them wrestle in this setting and I know what it looks like, even if it is going to be a 4-star match. With JONAH, I'm very curious what his skill set looks like in New Japan, what it looks like and what it adds to the product. And also, I would like to see if he can actively take his game to another level in this setting where he theoretically will be featured better. And so that's why for me, it's I want to see what he looks like in the G1. I want to see how Tom Lawler gets over and what he adds to New Japan. I think it's so interesting in the sense that throughout the pandemic, New Japan hadn't been able to have a lot of access to gaijins and people who can add a different element or flavor to the product. And so they relied a lot on the domestic talents. And so you saw a lot of Ibushi and Naito and Tanahashi and Shingo and Okada. And so, one of the things I was clamoring for actively for 2 years now is just, all right, what does it look like if some of the New Japan strong guys come over? What does it look like if this guy and that guy comes over? And then you have a guy in JONAH now who, he believes he's better than WWE saw him as. And, in WWE, he was the thick boy and he was the fluffy, he was the fluffy cutesy big man. And, he claims that he had to hold back, maybe some of his more hard hitting stuff and, this and that and how he wants to go to Japan. And he invoked the name of, Japanese legends like, Bam Bam Bigelow and Vader and compared himself to these guys and talked about how he wants to be that for New Japan. And it's you say these things, but every time I watch you, you don't feel as menacing as maybe you should. And you're losing a lot. And, this is not particularly his fault, but it's his first singles match in New Japan Pro Wrestling ever is him walking out there and losing to Toru Yano, which I know everybody loses to Yano in the G1. It's just kind of a weird rite of passage. But that doesn't make it suck any less, in my
first
opinion.
Match too, right?
Yes, first match. Doesn't make it suck any less, number one. Number two, it's an abysmal first impression. And number three, it's not even during the match, the body of the match, he came off particularly frightening or menacing or scary. And then out of nowhere, maybe he was outsmarted at the last second and Yano just, was able to kind of escape a guy who otherwise would kill him.
He was
Like,
he was
no,
getting backup and shit. Oh,
It
it
was
mad.
it was the opposite, honestly. It was I
Yeah.
actually thought Yano give him so much room and there was so much space. I actually thought it kind of exposed the frailties of his offense. That was what I
Yeah.
actually thought was the worst part. Like, because
Yeah.
he has offense, right? We all agree, like he
Mhm.
can do some stuff. But the
Mhm.
way that match was put together, he got to do hardly anything that would make him stand out. He was just walking,
Mhm.
like walking around, following Yano for
Exactly.
most of the match.
Yeah. I realize this because my favorite match of his that since he's left WWE is his match with Josh Alexander.
Mhm.
And even with that match, it's a bit of a tale of two halves, because Jonah he's not super great really at control segments or the beginnings of a match, and
Mhm.
he's not like super fundamental or anything. What he's good, what I enjoy of him is bombs and big moves coming from a
Yep.
guy of that size look really cool. So when he does a backdrop suplex, or he does the Vader bomb, or he does a sit out power bomb, or he does a Uranagi, it looks awesome.
Yeah.
It looks absolutely awesome. So, and so could I see some Vader in how he comes off when he does those big moves? Sure, but where he absolutely is just way behind in the guys that he invokes as inspiration is just the presence and the aura and how he comes off, and so the reason I again I was so vocal and passionate about it is because I think the business could use a Vader or a Bam Bam
Yeah,
Bigelow.
1,000,000%.
The
I,
business could use people like this. So when Japan has an opportunity to have somebody who could maybe fill a gap, quite frankly,
A void in your heart.
a void in my heart, and he's almost he's not doing what needs to be done on his end to fulfill that. It's disappointing. And it's why also last thing I'll say, there's a gap even between him and some other big, like I think Brody King.
I agree.
Oh,
Yeah.
tremendous.
Brody King is better at doing some of that stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So yeah,
I think
it'll be an
to
ongoing
your-
process, and we'll see how he does with some of these better wrestlers.
For sure.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I will say to your point, that was a great point about his strengths and weaknesses, because the Ishii match that got a lot of, kind of praise, and it was not
Mhm.
bad. I mean, it was a fun match, but the first half of it, Jonah took the whole thing because Jonah was losing. They wanted to make him look pretty good in defeat.
Mhm.
And that part of the match was the biggest flaw of the match because, as you just said, he's not very compelling in control, which is unfortunately, it has to be saying he's got to be good at that size and in that frame and in this character. If he's going to be a badass, his matches can't just be 50-50, back and forth, right? And
Mhm.
that is his biggest, to be kind of constructive, because I know we've talked about him now for about 10 minutes. And
Yeah.
But to be constructive, that's saying that he genuinely, if he just got better at that, it would help,
It would
right?
help
Like
his work. Yeah.
if he could fill in those gaps in a way that's fun and interesting and mean,
What?
that would be saying, what's happened, Monty? Oh no.
What happened?
Oh dear, what's happened? Is it something with Raw? What's happened?
That's using.
Go to Jim Ross's Twitter.
Oh,
Okay, let's. I'm afraid. I'm afraid.
I
you gonna
can't
read
even
this
read it out because you need to see the quote
don't.
tweet.
Yeah, let me.
And
see.
it's not the top tweet either.
Okay, is it the one quoting this photograph here? He says, "Wow." he really tweeted that on Maine.
Man said,
God bless.
that is.
I like the way she added Natty, like Natty was gonna hook him up. That rules.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
His cowboy hat smiley face emoji is incredible.
Yeah.
He have you seen that he does this thing where he always retweets WWE porn? Like the
Yes.
account at
Yeah,
WWE
at-
porn. Like,
At WWE porn, it'll be a slow motion gif of like Carmella just gyrating or something, and he'll just retweet it or just like it. It's just
man.
he's,
Well,
he's
there you go, folks. The latest on JR's Twitter.
on
We cover
Jim
everything.
Ross's Twitter.
that to disrupt our G1 talk and that.
That's fine. It's probably
talking of
best to be,
G1,
it's pretty best we cut off the Jonah talk.
yeah, I was gonna say I
the only
feel like
other.
Go on,
Go ahead.
finish your
I was
point.
gonna say the only real other thing I wanted to say about the G1 is it's just astonishing how little New Japan, domestic New Japan values Hiroshi Tanahashi and Shingo Takagi.
Yeah.
Like they are S-class wrestlers.
Yeah.
And Shingo post world title run has essentially been brought back down to mid card status. Um, and he wins and loses interchangeably, and he was doing the King of Pro Wrestling provisional stuff for a little bit, and he lost to Juice, who they are admittedly trying to push and get over, and Juice is not bad, and I thought he looked pretty good in his match with Shingo, but
Well,
it's yeah, I mean, if
I
you
was gonna bring that up.
Yeah,
He got something happened to Juice, man. You could tell, like, late in the match, it somehow, I think it may have been the headbutts, but they were talking a lot, and he wanted to get him up for his finish, right?
hmm
And he slid off, and I think Juice said to him, like, I can't hit it. Let's do the whatever the thing is, the imprettier thing that he does, unprettier thing. And they went home early because if you watch, you could tell at some point Juice was in a way where he didn't fully know what was going on, I don't think.
And that the finish itself, like, come off weird.
Honestly,
like,
rewatch it, you'll see what I mean. He hits it and he communicates to the referee like, that's it, because I can't get him up for the finish. So that's why it came across like it came out of nowhere, because it kind of did, unfortunately. But yeah.
Yeah. But I think that's pretty much it for the G1 highlights wise. Anyway, of course, we haven't gone through every match. Jay White Sonata, I thought that was pretty good.
I can't. Sonata's difficult for me, Monty. I struggle, mate. I really do. He's like a void, He's like, there's nothing there. Like he's in. He does stuff, and I've never got it. I never have understood. Like when he first got rolling, people was like, he's gonna be the next top guy, and it's like,
I've never understood it at that level, but
because that's the thing, right? People do say
that.
Often,
it's 100% a thing.
He's next up. It's like, why? I don't know. He's fine. It was a fine match. Don't get me wrong. It was a fine match. I find it difficult.
So yeah. Elsewhere over the weekend, we had the Noah Destination show, which was big because we had the first match on Keiji Muto's retirement tour that he's doing? So, yeah. I think it is.
The final countdown, bro. They're using the song and everything.
Oh, bro, that was tremendous. So yeah, Keiji Muto was taking
shout out to Noah's production.
Looked amazing.
Oh, bro, it was tremendous. Yeah, it was tremendous.
Unreal.
Yeah, they went all out for Muto. So yeah, he wrestled Kaito, and there was also Satoshi Kojima versus Kano for the GHC World Championship. We'll start with the Muto match because obviously, I guess it was actually our highest rated match of the week on the WrestlePurists website of our world famous ratings. He got a lot of 5 stars from people.
Wow.
A lot of people, really fucked with it because it was it's very rare these days that you get like true passing of the torch, like a real one. Like, you get told it a lot, but this one felt special, and even as someone who don't follow Noah too much these days, like, you don't need to, to feel a match like that. So yeah, that was tremendous. Hollywood, I know you like this one. Do you want to break it down for us?
Yeah, Keiji Muto is one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, and he's just flat out my favorite New Japan ace of all time. I don't know if I've ever revealed that on WrestlePurists, but I love Muto, and I do that while also being aware of a few of his deficiencies and flaws, because I look at him like Sting in so many ways, because I don't think either guy is technically like a great wrestler, and in Muto's case, a lot of like puro purists, that's a mouthful, don't like him because a lot of his matches, have quote unquote mat sitting and things that padded out and things like that. But for me, quite frankly, I just think he's just one of the most charismatic wrestlers I've ever seen from any country. He has unreal charisma, and he's so bombastic and charming and electric. And he's just flat out really fucking cool. So I've always liked Keiji Muto. I've always liked him. Him and Hashimoto from that generation, awesome. Hashimoto's like the best worker from New Japan from the 90s, but Muto was like, and they were both superstars, but Muto was the guy who just, to me, like, he he was just such a superstar. He was such a rock star. So I just wanted to toss that out from my point of view going into this, right? Like I love Keiji Muto. I'm far more forgiving of his lackluster recent performances than like the average Japanese wrestling fan, who is like, pretty tough on him, and maybe fairly so. But so with that out the way, like I watched the video package, and not to be a weeb, but you almost don't even need to speak Japanese to understand what's going on in the package, which I know a couple words here and there, and it was enough to just kind of piece together what was going on because it was so well shot and put together. But it made me feel really sentimental, and I think one of the things that Japanese wrestling is really good at is like not bullshitting on history in the sense that like WWE sometimes like they'll just ignore certain things or act like certain things don't exist or hide from certain things if it didn't happen in your promotion. And in Japan, there just doesn't really seem to be that. Like they don't give a fuck if like certain things happen not in their promotion but somewhere else. Like they'll just tell it if it's part of the story. You know what I mean? And Noah wasn't afraid to just kind of get into his history as a legend in New Japan and all that stuff. And so the video package and production was just amazing. The production and just the way his entrance was shot and all that other stuff, fantastic.
The final countdown was like,
oh my god!
They even blended it into his song.
His main theme, yeah, it was tremendous. And again, quite frankly, to me, because Muto's so saucy, all I needed from this match for me to enjoy it is like 25 dragon screws and like 16 shining wizards. And we were about halfway there, but we were about halfway there. The early part of the match worked because even though Muto has the reputation, especially in recent last 20 years of being a mat sitter, a lot of those portions were just built around him trying to hit the dragon screw on Kiyomiya, and Kiyomiya kept cleverly countering the attempt. And I'm watching the match just thinking like when Muto finally hits this, it's gonna be this awesome, well-timed, well-built up to spot, and it was.
Yep.
And when Kiyomiya finally was able to counter that and just some of the other signature offense from both guys, I just thought it was a really well-worked match. I thought Muto worked well within his means, and it was structured so that like there wasn't anything that he would do that would hurt the match. And Kiyomiya bumped well for him, and he worked well around some of his deficiencies.
He did a fucking top rope run, bro.
Yeah. Muto, when they were on the top rope,
at 20 minutes in, that was too.
I was so afraid Muto was gonna fall. I was so afraid he was gonna stumble because last year he tried the space rolling elbow across the ring, and his knees just said, "We're not doing this." Midway,
that was tough.
Yeah. And so I'm thinking like, because again, like for the listener, Keiji Muto has had bad knees since like 1998.
Yeah. He's
like, 59
years old.
59 years old. His knees have been dust literally for over 23 years. So when he got to the top there, and he did take his sweet time because I'm telling you, he had to negotiate with his knees. Like, look, we're gonna do this. I'm gonna jump. I'm gonna do this Rana. Please cooperate with me. And it when it actually like worked, I was like, holy shit, that's awesome. So he pulled that off. He can't do the moonsault anymore because it would literally paralyze him. But he did the Rana. I popped greatly. Kiyomiya did his own counter figure four, which is awesome. Kiyomiya did his own Shining Wizards to counter Muto's 74 Shining Wizards. And ultimately, I thought it resulted in Keiji Muto's best wrestling match since his match with Hiroshi Tanahashi at Wrestle Kingdom 3 in 2009. I loved it. It was awesome. And frankly, it's actually very similar to that match. If you guys have never seen it, you should check it out. It's a very similar match in that the young athlete is just kind of working his ass off around like Muto's Muto-ness. And then Muto just does all his cool signature moves. Obviously at a much faster pace in 09 than now. And that match is it resulted in a match about the same level though, because Kiyomiya is pretty terrific. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think the announcers,
our wrestler of the week.
I think the announcers drew that parallel, right? Didn't the announcers draw the parallel with the Tanahashi kind of arc of Tanahashi having to kind of move on past? I think they did at some point. Yeah, so definitely. This was tremendous. It was very powerful. It was a good example of how wrestling works as like it doesn't work in a vacuum, but there's definitely something to be said for the presentation starts when the video package begins to air.
Yes.
Like, if you watch this from the bell on, it's very good, but you do need to get a grasp of the stage they set. And like, That like you referenced all of it, and it's perfect. Like it looked amazing, but the visuals, they're just striking, man.
Yes.
Somewhere you have a memory of this guy. You do somewhere, even if you don't know it, you're going to see one of these pictures and go, "Holy shit!" You know, like how wide-spanning his history is.
Yeah.
I
He's
think
put
the
us so
match.
much.
Yeah, absolutely. I honestly think the match is kind of most interesting as like a kind of case study of wrestling and what it actually is. And what I mean by that is like, obviously, look, it's his retirement tour. We know the end is nigh. Like, I mean, you mentioned the knees. That's been a thing forever. But ultimately, we all just agreed this was this one match of the week. And it's like wrestling is such a unique middle ground between sports and like,
Theater.
like, your favorite actor often will act into their old age and they'll change and evolve, and your favorite singer will do the same. Wrestling is so much sport that we don't look at it that way. For obvious reasons, he can't do the moonsault anymore. He moves very, very slow out there. Ultimately, if he's locked in here and he has a story he can tell, he's still up to it. Because let's be clear, this was not a match that was like, oh, he give it a good effort. This was our match of the week. He's 59. I mean, it ain't a short match. This match went 26 minutes. So I'm kind of I'm thinking aloud here, because what I'm trying to get across is I think sometimes you should watch stuff like this and kind of think about what it is we like about wrestling, because we all we're truly moved by this, because his history is powerful. Like, he can use that forever. There's memories that come with him doing the Shining Wizard. No matter how slow it looks now, it doesn't matter, because that's part of the story he's telling. So I say all this to say, I mean, obviously it's your retirement tour, so I'm not saying the dude should continue wrestling. What I'm getting at is, I do think sometimes we can get lost in like the sports portrayal. Like, oh, this guy's washed, and he's this and he's that. It's like with the right story, the greats can do incredible things. This
Look
is
at
just
Tanahashi now.
exactly.
Look, his perfect example of it. His knees are cooked, bro. His knees are cooked. He can still go out there and hit 4 stars, man. It's crazy. Muto's obviously, like you just said, 59 years of age. His knees have been cooked for 30 years, and he's just had our match of the week. Genuinely as well. It weren't just like let's ironically pop ourselves.
And it was part of why the match worked.
Genuinely,
and frankly, the fragility of wrestlers can be weaponized in a positive way sometimes. Like when you're telling that old man story. It actively helps. CM Punk being rusty and trying to figure wrestling back out actively would be a really interesting story beat in his early matches. Like I thought in like his match with Daniel Garcia. I loved his match with Daniel Garcia. It's just a random one I'm going to draw out there, because like it was just young Punk versus veteran wrestler who's just trying to figure this back out, and this kid is giving him a hard time, and like when Garcia just like, I remember he chopped him in the corner, and then like Punk no-sold it, and he just screamed in his face like, ah! And Punk just slapped him, like, get the fuck out of my face, kid. I just, and he was putting various holds. I think that like the reality of people's physicality and physical state can often be used
can be weaponized.
To their benefit, even though it's easy to just kind of go, well, they can't do this move anymore, they can't do that anymore. But that can easily be, a piece of the match. It's like they tried to do this thing that they used to do that used to help them succeed, and they can't do it. How do they overcome this?
Yes.
And then the young wrestler exploits that, and even better yet, exploits it, and then also does the move that they can't do anymore. Bryan Danielson, his concussion history. Like the unpredictability of his concussion history and our genuine concern of his well-being was masterfully interwoven into his match with Brock Lesnar. Like
Brock's another one. Remember the match with Finn when he was working his stomach? It was just like, oh, he's got diverticulitis. Obviously, it's different than the aging thing, but
yeah. Oh, Shawn Michaels is back. That was like the story of every 100%. Shawn match. Like after he came back, it was like, oh my God, he's back. He had retired for 4 years because he's back. Like,
man. To what Joe said, even Muto, like 59 years of age, if you locked in up there and you've got a real story to tell, so Hollywood,
yeah,
Hollywood. alluded to it earlier when he talked about Jeff Jarrett. Like, we can still do
Yeah.
a fire angle, and the match
Yeah.
with Effie was what it was. But
Mhm.
it's like, he can
Because
still kind of do.
I-
He can still work,
You know
even
what
though
I realized?
he can't do what he could do 30 years
yeah,
ago. Of course he
exactly.
can. And
You know what I realized, Monty? Because as wrestling has kind of become more advanced and physically complex, people initially had this belief that it would leave a lot of guys from previous generations in the dust, and leave us with a landscape where like they can't ever reapproach the medium and be great or hang, so to speak. But I think what we've come to realize in the last few years, and frankly AEW has helped us see this because we've seen so many different types of wrestling be great in AEW.
Mhm.
I think what we realize is that even when you lose the ability to physically do pro wrestling, maybe to the same degree, if you have the art of the medium and the sport embedded in you, and you have if you have a very very high handle of just the art of wrestling, uh, it'll never leave you. It
Yeah.
will never leave you. And so it's why so many old wrestlers can come in, and the crowd will help them out a bit, and maybe just kind of prop them up, so to speak, and they'll kind of work around their deficiencies and just still be a storyteller and still be
And
great. It's why Sting is still awesome.
that's
Yes.
important too. The crowd
Yeah.
part. People
Yeah.
can look. People can think what they want about it and say, they can see it as cheating, whatever. But
Mhm.
wrestling doesn't work in isolation. The
No.
reason top stars matches work the way they do is because they enter the match over. That's where
Yes.
you can have a big, slow, dramatic build that builds this crescendo because you've
Yeah.
entered over. So wrestling doesn't work like the idea of well, yeah, this match got over live because Muto was great 30 years ago. That's the point.
Mhm.
That's what they're going for. Like
Yeah.
people care. Ultimately, I was only speak for myself, but I don't watch professional wrestling with a notepad and I'm like, well, that drop down tackle didn't look too good. Half a
Mhm.
star off. Like I'm looking, and look, if you watch it that way, God bless. But
Flair.
I'm looking to feel some of this.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. No,
Flair's
it's
gonna
why.
test his theory. He is.
well, maybe.
I was just gonna say
When he
this.
goes 3.25,
This
bro.
I was gonna say this is gonna look retroactively pretty good, or bad, but potentially pretty good for us if the Flair main event is great. But what I was gonna say is, to Joe's point, and I know not everybody feels the same way. Some people, it's just the physical aspect of wrestling and doing it at the highest, at most athletic level possible, right? Um, I guess two things I want to point out with that. Like for example, Craig William of Pro Wrestling Musings, he was recently tweeting about like Noah and how he had been disenfranchised with the product because of their over reliance on older wrestlers and older wrestlers dominating the top of the card, and it's taking away from the words he used were puro excellence of like the younger wrestlers, the Nakajimas of the world and people like that, and I certainly agree that like it's been a big problem with Noah when it comes to like the political aspect of holding talent back and not letting them succeed. But with that said, like, can Takashi Sugiura, you know, do as much, is he as fast or as explosive as Kaito Kiyomiya? Absolutely not. Is Masato Tanaka the, is he the athlete of a Kiyomiya? No, but they're absolutely assets to the product. And I think wrestlers like that and people from their generation absolutely still have something to contribute to pro wrestling, even if they can't contribute to the same athletic standard of younger wrestlers. And I know for some people, like, they don't really care, and that doesn't matter. But for me, I appreciate these aspects still being in the business, and it helps them kind of pass that down. Another example of this when it comes to feeling, Joe, is like for me, CM Punk versus Eddie Kingston is one of the best AEW matches ever.
Absolutely.
But for some other guys, it's not even the third best match on Full Gear.
And that's
You
fine,
know?
right? It's just
Yeah.
it's how you watch. It's very much a case of how you watch because I think to you and I that's unfathomable.
Yeah,
Because
exactly. Exactly.
I'll remember it forever, but
It
it's
is.
just it's hard.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like I can't imagine liking three whole matches more than that on that one show.
Whole match.
That, like three whole matches more than that one on that show. But that's just because for me, it's like I didn't watch that match. I experienced it.
I don't
Yeah.
even think
You know
I
what I
can name 3 AEW matches a lot more than
That's my point. Like I can't name you. Like I experienced that wrestling match. I didn't watch it. I was like literally literally just captured and transfixed as it was happening. You know what I mean?
Which is, I'll speak for me. That's very rare for me to get truly like entranced by a match. You know, like to be living and dying with every momentum shift. When that happens, it's really magical because it doesn't happen a lot. When we watch this much wrestling, I think you can lose that sometimes. It just is what it is, you know. But that was one for sure. I remember that vividly. It is worth noting too, to your point about Noah. That, you know, the point I made there about older wrestlers. I don't watch enough Noah to comment on the usage broadly. I think it's clear, you know, if anyone's upset with the kind of mass older wrestlers, I was talking more as a sort of concept, you know, like is there something interesting about how effective a match like this can be? I guess was my kind of Ric Flair will be an interesting addition to the science project in that regard because you'll see how much of it kind of, you know, how much you can get away with. Because I don't know how much Rick can do. So we'll
I think on paper it looks set for, you know, Andrade and Jay Lethal to just wrestle their asses off.
Yeah.
And for Jeff Jarrett and Ric
Andrade
Flair
is going to go nuts.
Yeah, to go nuts. And for Ric Flair and Jeff Jarrett to do wrestling. Just do wrestling. The heat and the blood and the psychology and the facials and the, you know, the gesturing and the key moves and all that kind of stuff. So depending on how it goes, it could. I mean, I honestly think the floor isn't that low for this. To be honest with you, I think literally even at worst, like I don't think it's gonna be like garbage. To be honest,
the thing that interests me is like what you said sounds logical, but like, is there also a chance that because this is much funnier to me, Lethal is the main training partner of Rick, right? So what if they pair up and on the other side we get a glance at Jeff trying to take some of this Andrade offense, you know, the big spinning back elbow and all that.
No, yeah, that might be a little weird, you know. Yeah, I that's hilarious. I just honest, you know what? I'm gonna make a bold prediction.
Oh,
I'm not saying this is gonna be my rating. Dave Meltzer is gonna give this 4 stars.
That's high.
That's high.
That's very high.
That's really high. Andrade is gonna go nuts. The crowd is gonna be insane, and then it's gonna be really heated.
Yeah, I know that is like pro wrestling to an extent.
Yes.
But like the crowd going nuts is 100% gonna like add an extra star.
Yes,
for
yes. I'm
100%.
telling you, listen. Crowd, Andrade work, and heat, and blood, and drama, and then the likely feel good finish will make this a observer 4 stars. Which means it'll be a Parker 3.5 stars, which means it'll be a Hangman 3 3/4, which means it'll be a Monty 3 3/4 or 3.5, which means it'll be a Chris and Rob 4.75.
My new favorite thing, because Monty adds us on all of these purist tweets, is when he tweets out like, my favorite is when he'll do, you know, Meltzer star ratings. He'll be like, he give the Usos like 4.5, and people are like, that's way too low. Like, wait, what?
Oh my, yeah, that was crazy. When Monty tweeted out the Swerve in Our Glory rating, right, and people were like, higher than the Usos versus Street Profits? You only give that fucking 4.5, and I was like, that was kind of overshooting it in and of itself. So that's hilarious.
We all have opinions, but like, seeing the reaction to just how highly those, you know, though it's obviously like the WWE fans who are kind of in that bubble who don't kind of like see much elsewhere. It must be, but seeing how highly they regard the work in that Usos Profits match.
Well, I will say,
compared to people who see a more broader stroke of wrestling.
For the sake of balance, Monty, you know, this, I was the high man on that match, right? I really liked the match.
It was very good.
The first half certainly had its flaws because I think the Usos have done a much better job in the past of a heat segment. I don't think they're as kind of interest in that part of the match at this point in their career, frankly, which is a shame. But I thought the second half of it was exciting enough that I actually thought in the end it was a 4 and change match. I really liked it more so than you guys, I think. But there is definitely a truth to people that think it's the best tag team match they've ever seen.
What did we give it?
You know what's fascinating, Monty, to me though. You know, there are the people who don't follow WWE. There are people who don't follow WWE, and like they're inclined to maybe. I was gonna say there are people who don't follow WWE that are maybe more inclined to if nothing else, maybe somewhat underrate the Usos because of how highly WWE fans rate them. Like it's interesting for me to view because I'm in neither bubble. Like for example, like some WWE fans will literally talk about like Usos Street Profits like it was like an all timer classic.
Yeah,
Which is like
that's what I was saying.
Which is comedy and just astonishing personally. But then you have people who are just kind of like don't mention the Usos in this conversation and that conversation. And sure, I don't think they're on the level of the Young Bucks or the FTR from a wrestling standpoint at all, like from an in-ring standpoint. But the Usos are a good act and they're fun to watch, talk. And they are good. I do think they're good.
Yeah.
And this year in particular, they've had a couple very good tag matches. Their matches with the New Day at day one was great. The Street Profits match was great. And then the Backlash 6-person tag was great.
I genuinely think, like to your point about the act, the quote good. I think they can be really good TV, like really strong.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's
where
I
really enjoy watching Jay talk.
And this is where we go back all the way to the start of this podcast when we talk about angles and stuff. Like in my mind, when I picture what I would like a weekly wrestling show to look like, which isn't just a match card, which if that's what you prefer, that's fine. But that isn't the way my brain works. It's like I absolutely think they're very valuable in that regard. Like I think I'll just now look. Let me be careful here. I think the Bucks are clearly the better team. Historically, the better team today, yesterday, tomorrow. But if I wanted a heel team to go out and get some heat and put the boots to my baby face, I'll take the Usos. Because I think they're better in that setting. I think they have an edge that is actually pretty good TV person. I've always thought that. So
you know what it is? When like Jay's doing a beatdown, he'll talk shit, right?
Yeah.
And I think he's the best shit talker actually of his family because Roman does the shit talk and it's solid. But like Jay, like I don't know if it's because of his voice and his delivery or his accent or whatever, but there is a genuine grit and an edge to it, and like it's very biting and how he's just yelling at you.
Desperate, right? Yeah.
What's up? Yeah. And so like when he's beating on someone, it's just like, don't mess with the bloodline and all that shit. And it's just like, oh damn, it is more like I guess menacing, so to speak, than the Young Bucks, which is why I think the Young Bucks are better when they try less to be like like threatening and they lean more into just being like shitheads because they're good at being shitheads rather than being like menacing or threatening.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
they're different. It was the point. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm aware that it isn't a perfect comparison because the Young Bucks said we can do more kind of shtick heavy stuff better than the Usos. It's just it's a good example of where I think sometimes we get so lost in who's better rather than just having the conversation about which role both teams. But I think they're both really good teams. I think the Bucks are better. I think the Bucks are going to go down as like a top 3 team in history. I believe that, but it doesn't mean the Usos are useless or that they don't have a role. Like they're very valuable. I think they're good for WWE TV anyway. So I don't know. It's a weird one. People have kind of lost themselves in that debate.
It's a weird debate to have, and I think it's just weird personally to just watch it because I don't feel as extreme as any of the sides in it. Like I don't think the Usos are the most garbage overrated team of all time, the way some people will throw them out. But I also don't think they're literally like, like the best team in the world either.
Yeah, they're not like S tier.
No, they're not. And again, from a wrestling standpoint, FTR and the Young Bucks 100% clear them. And it's some of that because of just the layout of WWE matches, sure. But I think even in a broader setting, I don't think they'd be in the in-ring level of those teams. But that doesn't mean that they're without merit or that they're just bad. I do think they're good. So
I actually like Mad King's point in the chat, who says Briscoes is a better comparison. The Usos definitely took an awful lot from the Briscoes in terms of
I think so too.
If you watch when they came back as heels, if you look how they lay out their promos, it's very, very Briscoes.
I always thought so. I always thought they were. I thought that the Usos at their best were the WWE version of the Briscoes.
Like pretty much what they are.
Briscoes. I mean, you talk about great teams.
Briscoes are in that tier, man. Everyone
historically too. Monty.
Historically, 100%. Historically,
they've been fucking great for a long time.
when you look at resumes, like I feel like when people make the argument for Bucks being the greatest tag team of all time, and they say like, just look at the resume. But look at the Briscoes resume. You could argue, maybe not longer, because I obviously it goes back further probably, but you know, books kind of, especially like with PWG and everything, like they
I
just
think
kind
longer.
of
It's
stat.
just
They just stat padded.
it's
force.
more varied. You know, the Bucks kind of bounce around everywhere.
Whereas Briscoes, you know, out of the three, I think they're probably my favorite, to be honest. Out of like the FTR books,
I would agree with
Briscoes,
that. Yeah.
trifecta. I love the Briscoes, man. It's a
I can't
shame
wait for
that I
Saturday.
don't,
I cannot wait for Saturday, lads.
bro. It's
No, I'm really.
that's the last
I'm
thing I wanted to
so,
talk about, to be honest.
yeah. I'm so
Obviously we've
excited for
covered
Death Before Dishonor.
Noah G1. Raw's already ongoing, so what's the point of talking about SmackDown, etc.
Real quick,
Rampage.
I want to toss out real quick, Monty. I was gonna say, apparently Titus opened Raw with a mission statement. I gotta watch it to see what he was actually saying.
Well, I put it on in the background to just kind of see if I was gonna miss a big angle or anything to open Raw, and when I turned it on, all I could hear was WWE Universe doing USA chants. So
that's
you know, it seems like it was probably one of those.
I thought he pulled a Vince McMahon 97 and said, "We are going to stop insulting your intelligence. The WWE is going to engage in more contemporary content that is suitable for blah, blah, blah." I thought we were going to get like an ushering in of the TV14 era, like by Titus O'Neil.
Usos, Bucks, and FTR top 15 teams ever. Yeah, probably. The Usos is a weird one to put all time, I think.
I think
they're hard to rank. I think
Look,
their legacy will age very well.
Yeah, because WWE will ensure that. Like WWE will train people.
They're gonna tell you that they were the best team of their era outside of the New Day, and there's gonna be the video packages of them holding all the titles and standing with Roman and the highlights of all their big matches at big stages and celebrating. And you know, if nothing else, you're gonna have that, and then you're gonna have the people that were kids during this period of wrestling or like younger, basically saying like, "Oh man, the Usos are underrated. On God, like this and that." I mean, we're already seeing Monty. Thunderdome nostalgia tweets are beginning to trickle in the timeline.
You was part of it.
Sure, but frankly, someone I just saw a tweet today. Somebody made a nostalgia tweet about the Austin Theory, Seth Rollins, Buddy Murphy trio that lasted 3 weeks in the Performance Center, in front of no fans. So what do you think the Uso tweets are going to look like in 3 years?
The unified title reign. And to be fair, it's not been a bad reign at all.
No,
so it's not.
That's
not
the
one
one
of those
thing.
things.
In fairness, at least when they do that agenda fully, at least it's like kind of they have been the team really for the last is it like 10 years now? 9 years? They've been like one of the because they were the main babyface team before the New Day became a thing. They had the matches with Harper and Rowan in 2014.
Yeah, probably when you think of WWE tag teams, you think of New Day and the Usos. To be honest,
yes.
that's who comes to mind. And like you said, the Usos were they were established before the New Day, so definitely they're definitely 1 and 2 anyway over the past decade. Gotta say.
The profits
100%.
are excellent, but they're the top.
Yeah, profit to like this decade that we're in now. 20 onwards. But yeah, man.
FTR Briscoes, Monty. Sorry, we cut you off, Carol, mate.
FTR Briscoes. Yeah, 2 out of 3 falls. Fired up.
Be sick.
The angle, sit down interview, whatever you want to call it, was flawless. The way they ended it was tremendous. It's very rarely that like matches get me like legitimately excited, but sometimes I see graphics and I'm like, yeah, that's going to be a good match, and I will enjoy watching said match sort of thing. But in terms of like matches that genuinely like, I was driving when I seen the announcement for the stipulation. I was driving in my car. You should have seen me. It was shameless. It was a shameless celebration. There's not many matches that can make, not especially rematches that could make me do that. This is special, man. 2 special teams. The first match I'm not sure if this is a hot take, but I genuinely think it's the greatest tag match to take place on American soil.
Wow.
Yeah, there's not much more to add, to be honest. It's just like it's a rematch of one of the greatest tag matches I've genuinely ever seen in my entire life. You know, the only matches I'd really put on its level for my personal enjoyment is like all Japan tags and shit like that. You know,
Yeah.
Pillars.
like epic tags where there's the crowd's going insane. Like, anyone who's seen any of the 4 pillar tag matches know exactly what I'm talking about.
Man.
So
They're tremendous.
but yeah, I'd genuinely put that up there right with them. And like I said, the best tag team I've seen take place on American soil comfortably.
Mhm.
Yeah, I co-sign. I think Monty, that it's probably my favorite wrestling match ever. Like I genuinely, I will never forget when they cut to that video package where the guys were cutting promos.
Mm-hmm.
It actually had the vibe of like, oh my god, this is real. Because I've been a
I wish-
Briscoes fan so long, it was very special. The atmosphere was.
You know what I'm jealous. You know what I'm
Itching
jealous
my
of
mind.
you, Joe. I'm jealous that you guys got to watch it live. I think there's just a unique feeling to just experiencing it in the moment
There
rather
was
than
for that.
than me walking in after the fact and being told like you need to check out this classic match and I see it the next morning. And mind you, I saw it after the fact and I still thought it was tremendous. But I just like this is a uniqueness to watching.
Absolutely, yeah.
There's uniqueness to watching a wrestling match of that level in the moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because you're feeling it, right? Like it's playing out. Everyone is at the same time. Like the thing I
Yeah.
always remember about that match was multiple people messaging me and being like, "Is this the best thing you've ever seen?" Like there was something. It was something very special. I honestly have no good comparison for it in my time watching, which is shorter than many, so I'm no expert, man. But for me personally, it's as good as I've experienced. I will say my interest in this. I know it sounds very nerdy, but I'm just going to be honest. I'm really interested by what these 4 men think is the natural follow-up to what they did last time.
No,
Because they were
I
very
agree.
proud,
Dude, I was thinking about that heading to work. I was like,
there you go.
Briscoes FTR was a 1-match story, the way they worked that match.
Yeah.
You know, they got all the heat and the violence and the anger and the vitriol out of the way. What is the natural progression from that?
Exactly.
There really is none because that was a 1-match story. And so
Mhm.
now they're challenged with creating a sequel to a standalone film. You know, and it's like so what direction do you take? Do you do more of the same? Do you go backwards and say, all right, well, we got the hate out of the way. We now have mutual respect on a wrestling and athletics level, but we have to now decide who are the better wrestlers. Do we just try to out wrestle each other?
Mhm.
Do we do that and then we gradually get more gritty and angry as the match goes on because there's so much tension that's still unresolved? It's so much of that. So it's just very interesting to think about, and these guys are great wrestlers, so they're absolutely going to actively consider these things, and so I am looking forward to what the approach is going to be, because again, you're not going to create that once in a lifetime unique feeling of the first match, and so it's like, okay, how do you follow that up if you can't do that then? It's always fascinating to see when great wrestling matches have sequels.
I genuinely don't want to. I don't want to lock myself into predictions because I have such high opinion of these guys as wrestlers that I just want to see what they come up with,
Yeah.
But I do think if you watch the sit down, I think with the idea they're working with, the Briscoes were kind of worn down and they're fresh now. I would not be surprised if they kind of jumpstart this with a really extended Briscoes shine or heat, depending on which side of the fence you're on in that regard, because it's kind of a just pick who you want, right? But I think there's a chance the Briscoes kind of take the first act of this match in a really striking way, where it's like they're angry about how things went last time. This is still their house now.
Yeah. And as they're doing that, the commentary is like, remember, guys, they don't lose 2 out of 3 falls matches. I don't know if you guys know this. They've never lost a 2 out of 3 falls match ever.
What you could do is with that, you have them score a fall relatively early, and you do an extended control portion where they're just trying to close the show. And the FTR are kicking out 2.9s on every tandem offense, and the Briscoes are kind of desperate. And then when you do the big momentum shift, you go into kind of like the epic, so to speak. But that's just one idea that crossed my mind when I watched the sit down. But honestly, man, I'm coming into it just I just want to see what they come up with. I just think they're 2 of the great teams, so I'm sure they're going to have something pretty awesome waiting for us. 2 out of 3 falls, bro. It's going to be special.
Yeah.
All right.
Great stuff. I want to cover that in a thread. The only really other major thing I have to say about Death Before Dishonor, I have two really big points before we get out of here, Monty.
Go ahead.
And it's this. So I've been, as we're talking, I actually rewatched during this podcast. I rewatched Garcia versus CM Punk and both Garcia Kingston matches, which were so great. And I genuinely think this kid is already one of the best wrestlers in the world. To be honest with you, especially for like the type of wrestling that I enjoy.
Top what? Look, are we talking top 10, top 20, top 50? What does that mean?
He there's nobody he'll stand in the ring with and be out of his depth is kind of what I mean by that. Okay. I think in his own way he can stand up to anybody and not only hold his own but absolutely shine doing what he does. So and if you can do that, then that means you're one of the best wrestlers in the world. Because other guys sometimes they're at a certain level, but you put them with another guy and it's like, wow, what just looking at it, it's like, wow, this guy's outclassed. You know, I think Garcia has room to grow even more as a persona, in terms of his star power and, you know, some of the other aspects of wrestling. Certainly, he's in like the middle stage of that. Like he's more advanced than he was when he first came in, and he still has another level to go from that point. But just purely as a worker, I think he is one of the best wrestlers in the world. And if that's 20, 25, whatever you want to say, go for it. I don't really look at wrestling numerically like that, but that's just kind of what I mean when I say that. It's a feeling based thing. What I was going to say is that, and I've already expressed this in past podcasts. I'm most excited for the follow up to Yuta versus Garcia because that match was unreal. But now it's way higher profile, and there's way more people who even know who these guys are now when they're wrestling this match, and they're named talents that wrestle on AEW. And I think this is a match that, at worst, it'll just be another good match in a sea of good matches in the business. But I do think this could be potentially something that's looked back as a seminal work for both guys. When you're looking retroactively at what are the matches that took their dynamic, their rivalry, their individual careers to the next level, I think this could stand out as like, oh, when they finally faced each other off and in the Ring of Honor stage for the pure title, they had this match.
It's kind of what we, you know, like when you're imagining not Ring of Honor, and you can kind of focus in on two talents like this and give them the opportunity to do something that can kind of breathe a bit and have a bit more breathing room. So it's like this is like the second, third biggest match on the show, to be honest.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. On an AEW pay-per-view.
It's third.
Yeah, third's fair.
Claudio's pretty big get, I think, for the show.
Yeah. I
was putting that as number one.
Okay.
FTR Briscoes, bro. We just
that's honestly, bro. Honestly, though, that came from me just seeing it as a separate event. Because like, when Briscoes FTR won, genuinely in a vacuum felt like its own event.
I get you.
You know, like the graphic got thrown up, the crowd risen up. Like, it was just different for that 40 minutes or whatever it was. It was just different. It was completely different and outlier in the rest of the show. This will probably be the same, but just not to the quite the same extent because it don't have the novelty of the first one.
And the rest of this show is better too. It's worth saying. I mean, this show looks really strong, so it will kind of fit in more.
This could easily be the show of the year.
I agree.
And that's crazy. Following up another what I believe is the show of the year, which is the Forbidden Door show. Yeah. I think it's actually pretty funny and ironic that we could be looking at a situation where the two best Tony Khan pay-per-views ever will end up being two shows that aren't like directly AEW only shows.
Yeah, it is interesting, definitely.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, the only really other main thing I have to say, I could get into some Gresham discourse and who wins the Claudio thing.
I was going to let you go off on Gresham.
I'm kind of tired emotionally and don't really want to. So it is what it is. Yeah, Twitter has withered me.
Kick this shit out.
Twitter has kicked the shit out of me, and so I don't even. I've lost the will to even fight about it. So be it. You know what I mean?
He had a good match, man.
I thought so.
He did. Although I haven't really seen anyone say it was bad.
No, Monty. When I actually was about to start Rampage, I was actually told that Gresham stunk the joint up when he came out. So I was really worried. That's part of why I was so excited, because I was told what happened to your boy? Like that match was awful. He stunk it up. So I was like,
what's our prestigious rating?
I don't know. I was worried. I went to Rampage and I was like, no, this actually a really good match. So, that's just something to consider.
3.5 stars.
I thought it was really good. But here's what I'll say about Ring of Honor as a whole. I said this to you, Monty, privately, and I kind of wish it was recorded because I thought it was such a gem on my end. So let me pat myself on the back to back. Ring of Honor has a very good chance of becoming my favorite wrestling brand, depending on how things go.
Oh yeah, I think I've said that on the
some
point.
Yeah, and the primary reason why is because the way I look at it, AEW, like, even with all the numerous flaws, AEW is a great product. But at this point, you know what it is? It's an apartment with a lot of really good furniture and a lot of cool little trinkets and posters and figurines and stuff. And when you walk into this place, it's a bit congested and maybe sometimes not comfortable to sit in because there's so much. And yeah, you can look to your left and be like, wow, look at this really cool statue. And look to your right, wow, look at this beautiful painting. There's just so many great things in this room. But there's too many things in this room. And so it's not maybe the best working space or it's not the most comfortable space to sit down and stretch your feet out and breathe. And so the way I look at Ring of Honor, it's this new apartment complex that's wide open and it's beautiful. And there's a really nice couch and there's a really nice fridge and there's a really nice table and one really good chair. And so it's really spacious and open and nice to just sit in and breathe in. And there's beautiful stuff in the house, but there's not too much stuff in the house. And so a brand that potentially has the working space to just breathe and hyper focus on 6 key guys, to me, is a very appealing proposition. A brand where so just if they can just hyper focus on Samoa Joe, Lee Moriarty, Lethal, Gresham, Claudio, Garcia, Yuta, that on paper sounds awesome to me.
Yeah, that sounds like what I want, honestly. Very much so.
Yes, and it depending on how it goes, it can easily fill the void of pre-pandemic Black and Gold NXT. Because one of the appeals of those NXT shows is the great takeovers were 5-match cards. And the brand itself was very simplistic in how it was booked.
Yep.
But the simplicity and the fact that they didn't want to overthink the room worked to its advantage. So
absolutely. No, I completely agree. I think there is a really strange misunderstanding now where people go, actually, NXT TV was boring back then. It's like, no, it wasn't boring. It was just traditional wrestling television. It was nice, really simple, basic wrestling TV, and it was awesome. But speaking of such, before we go, I know my gimmick well enough to know I should bring up Samoa Joe. We have a week. At some point on this week's TV, I want like a little video package. He's going to wrestle in Ring of Honor again this weekend, man. That's pretty fucking cool if you ask me. Like, I think that's something worth. Just give me a little video. They have all the footage now, right?
It's part of what makes it from a good to a great card for me. Is that like fucking Samoa Joe's on it, man? He's wrestling Jay Lethal, and would I wish for him to be feuding with someone else?
It'd be good.
But Jay, he can work. It's not. If Jay Lethal wasn't one of them people, so we can say whatever we want about him, how disinterested we are in him. He's escapades outside of the ring, whatever you want to call them. But he can work, and
it's going to be a very professional match. They're going to go about 12.
It's not like Samoa Joe and him are going to stink out.
No, they're going to have a very official match.
Worries about that.
And if they go early enough, they're going to have a really hot crowd because Joe is super over in every building he walks
into. I think it should be the opener.
I agree. But I think it doesn't matter because Joe's going to get a great reaction here. But I do think from a storytelling perspective, it would be nice to just use some of that great footage of yesteryear and show me some Ring of Honor Joe stuff and kind of paint the picture of this is a big deal. Look, we all know he came back in 2015, but fuck it, you control the narrative forever you want, right? Like it's a homecoming, even still. That's still 7 years ago.
Joe, honestly, I heard people. I've been getting whispers that they're going to add some matches to this card, and I kind of hope they just let it hang. To be honest, because
me too.
I think 5 matches, and then you give the space to let the commentary break down, the match from a wrestling standpoint, and give me some really, really well produced packages. That is just a beautiful proposition for me. Just
I agree.
Give the card and the show space to do an interview or two, a promo or two, a video package or two, some commentary analysis, and let us take in the results of some of these matches. I think that's like awesome, just to think about personally,
I agree.
rather than throwing 4 more matches on and just kind of playing them in rapid succession.
Yeah, I agree with the hope for it, but the chances of Tony Khan not adding a match the week of.
But
low.
hopefully they stop at like this sounds silly, but I hope they stop at like 6, 7, not like I hope they don't do fucking 9. There's no like don't do that. You know?
The thing is, because we're in the final week, and because here's the thing, like even though sometimes Tony will announce a bunch of new matches in rapid succession for certain cards, you would at least have been seeing the seeds of it on TV to where you're sensing it coming, right? With this show, I don't really even see what could be added unless he just literally just creates a bunch of matches out of thin air.
I think
that's what he done on the last time, though.
I think they're going to do Lee and Seidel versus
Lee and Seidel could happen. Something involving those two guys.
Yeah, I think they may do those two versus. They could actually, because Dante's in next week wrestling Lee. They could do the triple the trios with Tully's group. You know, they could do something like that. I think, which is
wait. Who would be the third person in the Seidel group?
Dante would be with them because they're wrestling on Rampage.
Okay. Dante. Yeah, sure. I mean, sure.
It's not. I mean, it's something I could see happening. I don't really necessarily need it.
I think I could see it happening as well because I think like Tully's group. I can't see them. You know, aren't they meant to be like the Ring of Honor?
They're the Horsemen, brother.
Yeah. So yeah, obviously Gresham, he's in the group newly, but
Oh my
I would
God.
be very surprised if we didn't get a trios or a Brian Cage singles match.
I have so much to say about Gresham being just thrown with Tully and that whole stuff, but we don't have the time, and I just don't have it spiritually in me. But God bless. We'll see how this whole thing plays out, I guess.
That was a good tease for the next one. Good job. Very good. There you go, folks. One day you'll hear it.
I'll
subscribe.
And following Death Before Dishonor, there's going to be more sample size for me to maybe even elaborate on some of this. So sure.
Indeed, it'll be interesting. Monty, anything else we need to cover, Monty, or are we good to go here?
We're good to go. We've done this, I think, 2 weeks in a row, or we've done it at least twice now, where we've gone head to head with Monday Night Raw.
Monday Night Raw.
Hopefully, it doesn't kill our demo, and we do just fine.
I think we killed Raw's demo last week.
I heard that. I did hear that. Yeah.
Yeah. Birdie told me.
So rest of the week, Kaito. What's the pronunciation?
Kaito Kiyomiya.
See, that's what I said earlier, but then I second guessed myself just now.
Yeah,
Kaito Kiyomiya, rest of the week. Match of the week, Keiji Muto versus the aforementioned
Kiyomiya.
What else have we got? Joe's just dropped a feature. A feature review.
Yeah, I don't
call them the same thing. Yeah, I was gonna say it's not really a feature, is it?
I don't know why, but I've made like a firm stance.
Joe's we've been lucky enough to have Joe editing a lot of our features and stuff that we put out there because he was part of the world famous Fightful team and he's written probably more features than he'd care to admit.
Worked in the Fed, brother. Up in New York,
Joe's been out there front line in the field when it comes to feature writing, so we're very lucky to have him. And now he's kind of gone off on this project, if you will, of you're gonna see a lot more match reviews, and we're gonna try and make that like a thing. And I think it's something that you could get involved with as well, Hollywood, when you actually get the time.
Yes.
Hardly ever. But
did you see my thing on Gresham and Moriarty?
That sort of thing. Yeah, definitely. Like you saw, notes app or thread or whatever.
Yeah.
You can kind of beef it up a little bit, and do it as a full-on feature because
100%.
I don't think there's not enough of it in this space. I don't think actual reviews. Everyone just kind of people either just pop or people just pop or slander WWE. That's kind of all people really do. Really, there's no like real
nuance
review. Yeah, nuances or reviews or like actual like real. Like you just said, nuanced takes, and with these reviews, we can kind of open the door to that. And obviously, having Joe is perfect way to do
Well, I
that.
appreciate you, but it's worth saying, look, we're not, trying to fool anyone here. I'm aware match reviews are very, very niche, right? We're aware. We know what it is. I just am a firm believer in, if we really want to frame this as an art form, which I'm happy to do, I think we could do a better job, those of us in wrestling media, whatever the hell that means, of covering it as such. Because critical review is a big part of covering movies or music or TV.
Yeah.
And in wrestling, it has been limited to just how many star ratings is it going to be at the end, And I think that's a real shame. You may read my reviews and disagree. You may find them to be, nonsensical. But ultimately, I want to kind of, and with WrestlePurists, we want to encourage actual critical review to be a thing in wrestling because it feels like it should be, right? We all have so many opinions. This review.
Here's my thing about it, Joe. It's like we can all just throw a star rating out, but I like hearing your internal logic for how you reach that point. Right. And so, for me, it's like I can throw an arbitrary number out, right? But my 4 may not be equal to what your 4 is, which is why, like, one of the worst things I think in wrestling discourse is when someone will be like, "Man, I thought this match was incredible, 4.5," and someone else will be like, "Yeah, me too." Like, someone else will throw 4 and be like, "You only give it 4," and it's like you may not realize that you both thought the match was great. You know what I mean? But it's just like your numeric scaling of how you rank great is way different. And so that's why for me, what's much more valuable is how you articulate how a match made you feel. And so when I hear that, I can see what your personal logic is that led you to you seeing the match that way. And so like I give matches star ratings just like everybody does. But for me, for the most part, they're just kind of like a loose guideline, a bit of an indicator rather than just like when I really have a lot to say about a match, I make sure to vocalize that rather than just go this match 3.5. Like I will say like I thought that because it's so much more than that. So much more goes into wrestling than for it to just be reduced to just that type of conversation.
Monty and I actually had the conversation. That was a stylistic choice that I personally, and I understand it will be limiting, but I'm glad I made it. For WrestlePurists, we star rate matches, right? Monty has a spreadsheet, bro. He can tell you my rating for every match that I watch. Yeah. But on those reviews, I leave it. And the reason I leave it is because I know that our audience has been trained to just scroll to the bottom and see the ratings. So I'm like, see, let's just write and see if it will agree or disagree with the opinion rather than the number or the amount. That's a little thing. But yeah, 100%. I appreciate you plugging that, Monty. I mean, it's I think it's relatively interesting stuff.
In fact, I'm glad actually sometimes you can give an extended write-up of a match because, like for me, right, I was really high on Gresham Moriarty, and I know that Gresham, like it's fun to troll me and stuff because I like him and all that other stuff. But frankly, there was a lot of people in my quotes saying things like, why are you gassing this mid-match? Why did you give this mid-match this rating? Why did you give this match this that? It's like, well, if you want the answer to your question, you could read the write-up where I explain why I thought it was this level. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like you're asking me a question that the answer to your question is in the write-up. Like, why was I this high on this match that you weren't this high on? Well, I'm not asking you to agree with me, but I articulated why I felt this way, and it's right there for you to read. So
absolutely, yeah. Hopefully that's something that can kind of we can make part of our identity at WrestlePurists. I think that's something we're all kind of fired up about, just opinions and such. But,
for real.
Give us a thumbs up on this video, folks. We've been going now for over 2 hours.
Yeah.
We covered many things. If you asked me what, I would have to think for a minute because we went across the board on many different things. At one point, there was a weekend review, which I'm pretty sure happened. So we hope you've enjoyed it. Give us a thumbs up. Please subscribe. WrestlePurists.com, at WrestlePurists on Twitter. Monty, any other plugs, anything else, or are we about good here? What do you think?
I think we're all good. Right? Yeah, just WrestlePurists.com, WrestlePurists on Twitter. Yourselves on Twitter, Backup Hangman, Joe Hulbert. Yeah, I think we're ready to get out of here. Ready to take it on.
Well, it's been a hell of a time.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Appreciate you guys.
We'll see you on the next one. Keep grinning, all hell.